Rise up, the Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up, rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.
And we're back to another episode of the D's on Fire podcast. What a year. What a truly magical year. Going all the way back to the off season where we were ranked second in the A10 preseason poll behind Dayton. And then the long journey of ups and downs along the way. Wouldn't trade a second of it for anything at this point. What a year.
No, how could you? Even if I can't believe after an 0-5 start, we have a happy ending to the season, a happy podcast that we can do.
Yeah. That was the thing I was most worried about, and I said it to Zach in one of the pods that we did we did so many pods over the past 2 weeks. We did one every 2 weeks throughout the season, and then wow. But I was most terrified because both of these teams, the women's and the men's teams, had so much talent on them. They were truly special with how much talent they had, how well they played together as a team. And it seemed like they might underperform because we weren't going to get an at-large bid chance. So they had to win the whole thing. And if each team didn't win one or two games in the A10 tournament, there's a chance they weren't getting any postseason play.
Right.
So, wow, what a transformation going into the A10 tournament and just making every Duquesne basketball fan, whether casual or diehard's wildest dreams, comes true. And the icing on the cake was winning against BYU to open up the tournament and be the first Cinderella of this year, which there really isn't any that made it past the round of 32.
No, yeah, it's a kind of a chalk Sweet 16 for the most part, other than NC State. But yeah, as you said, the first upset of the tournament. And I guess I was mistaken. Didn't realize the 11-6 is really the new 12-5. I guess we're a little old. I showed my age there, I guess.
Yeah, we
unknowingly
haven't done our bracket analysis in a long time, apparently. But yeah, there was NC State being an 11 seed, sort of a Cinderella, but at the same time, you're a Power 5 conference team. So
right, yeah, that's what. So it's crazy. I pretty much ignored work that day. I was working, technically speaking, but I was at home, made sure I was at home, and that game was a nail biter. It was super entertaining too, though. That was just a good March Madness game.
Yeah, I watched that game at the Power Center Ballroom with a bunch of students and faculty, and there were some alum, but for the most part, it was students and faculty. Probably close to 1,000 people were there, and it was the most electric I'd seen a Duquesne student fan base throughout the entirety of a game.
Just campus, in general, I would imagine, just any campus activity, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. I will say the student energy level wasn't as high Saturday night, which was a little disappointing when I went back to the Power Center. But to be fair, the team's energy level also wasn't as high in that game. And it was partly because Illinois is so good. They have to win the whole thing at this point. They looked so good.
I kind of want to focus. Well, let's focus on BYU first. Let's relish in the win a little bit.
We'll relish the win. I mean, from the start, they came out hot. I feel like they needed to. This entire run, it felt like we always came out hot to start. I can't remember. St. Louis was probably the only game where we came out slow.
Yeah, I was gonna like I'm not gonna focus on Illinois, but I was saying like during the game, we haven't been punched in the mouth in a while. Like we kind of started off games really nice with leads. I think at some point in that Illinois game, like we only were down in that Dayton game for a little bit or something. Like so we didn't really like deal with it a lot in the last few games. But yeah, BYU is a great start. Um, it really got closer than it should have at the end, if like in hindsight.
Yeah. Um, I mean, Trey closed it out as he should. He drove to the basket when we needed to. He made the clutch free throws. But he
After
also,
having just like a so-so shooting night too.
yeah,
4-12 in that game.
yeah, it seemed like he was pressing early on in that game to try and find some sort of offensive contribution. Uh, Day Day was hot in the first half and really didn't get as many opportunities in the second half of that BYU game. Um, Netchus was just
Oh,
ginormous. I
electric.
I
He was
mean,
huge in that game.
yeah, he was huge in the A10 tournament too. He came up with those clutch 3-pointers when we needed him most in the VCU game. Um, he he earned every minute that he got. Coach Dambrot
Yeah.
continued to include him in the rotation throughout the year. That was another thing that was brought up by a bunch of journalists covering Duquesne over the past week and a half. Was Netchus probably would have been benched and not seen the floor if he was on many other teams with how large our rotation was. But
Right.
I mean, Dambrot was smart to play the young guys, and it paid off in dividends, huge dividends. I I do want to mention this because I don't want to forget it. The Day Grant inbounding strategy finally paid off in that BYU game in the biggest ways possible.
It did. It didn't work on the first one. I think who ended up getting
I think it
fouled
was
in that
Netchus.
situation.
I think he buried both free throws if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and then the commentators even said it. They were like, "Why is Day Day your
And
best free throw shooter inbounding the ball?" And then they finally executed passing it back to him to end the game, which is what I said. That was my theory in the
I
beginning, and I thought execution wise, it just they weren't doing it.
well, I
So
mean,
it's good to finally know that we were correct.
yeah. Uh I still no, I can't trash it anymore. But
No, you can't. Yeah, you
it,
can't trash it. You can respectfully disagree,
yeah,
but it
but
worked.
it worked flawlessly in the biggest moments. Um
I
such a
also
great
want to just shout out Natchez a little bit more, just because he in that BYU game specifically, Drame was in foul trouble early, so he had to
yeah.
play more minutes than even he was getting before. He played 30 minutes in that game, went 4-7 from the field, 2 of 3 from three, 2 of 2 from the line, 12 points overall, 6 boards, 3 blocks for. I just started calling him the super ginger. Like he was doing everything.
He he
He
admitted
was
post
absolutely
game.
enormous.
He admitted post game he was a little tired. He wasn't used to the 30-minute game. And Dambrot said that yeah, didn't want to play him 30, but we needed every single minute that he gave us.
No, yeah, he was electric, and all I heard, like everyone was out of the 11-6s, like we were probably the least expected to win out of those matchups, and everyone kept saying, "Oh, BYU's offense, BYU's offense. Oh, they're so good from three, so good from three. I don't Duquesne can't hang. They can't hang." I always thought we had a chance, even from an unbiased perspective. I just like the defense. I'd like the matchup a lot more. We can get once we get into Illinois. There's a multitude of reasons why that was a bad matchup, but for BYU, defense versus your main philosophy on offense is 3 pointers. Oh no, I always like that matchup for Duquesne.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We were going into the tournament. We were fine guarding 3-point shooting teams. It was the athletic bigs that we were worried about. And honestly, that was part of the reason I was a little concerned, is because I listened to BYU fan podcasts going into it, and they were hyping up how their bigs are just going to be more athletic and bigger than we've ever played, and they were not. I mean, their bigs were nothing special.
No, not at all. And I'm looking at like the rebounding
Oh, we out
statistics.
rebounded them like crazy.
Yeah, not overall in the game, but it was, it was pretty neck and neck. Not any sort of advantage like you were kind of alluding to with the BYU fans. Um, they just played, and their offense was that was their best offensive performance, and probably including the A10 tournament, arguably.
Yeah, I think St. Louis might have been the one where we probably played better offensively, but we didn't play nearly as well
Yeah,
defensively in that game. So yeah, I think that was probably our best overall game. Dayton probably a little better on defense, but not as good as on offense. So
right.
those
And
would be the,
VCU was a rock fight, so
yeah, which we wanted. So
which we wanted, but yeah, that was by far that was even actually that offensive performance was worse in Illinois, VCU.
yeah.
So points wise, for sure.
Yeah, well, the second half of the Illinois game. All right, we're getting into it. I mean, we keep alluding to it. The second half of Illinois, it didn't seem like Illinois was playing nearly as tough on defense, which was fair because we still couldn't stop them, regardless of what we tried. There was four players on their team who could basically score at will. It seemed. Uh, I don't know how you felt, but it was just seemed like it didn't matter how we tried to guard them. There, it was just going to leave somebody else who could score at will open.
Um, you I could like psycho and I could totally analyze the actual basketball aspects of what was lacking and what led to a loss. If we're just being honest, they were just way more talented. Like it just that's all it comes down to. It was a different level of speed of the game. They just played, especially what's his name? Shannon Jr. was just so not only fast off the ball, but on the ball. The
Just
way they ran their offense was so much faster than us. Like just the speed of the game and the talent overall. Like Illinois, just we were outclassed and we were playing. That's the different level of Division One basketball that we want to get to at some point. Um, we just it was like it was a clinic out there for
yeah.
them.
I will say I looked up Shannon's highlights beforehand. I googled his name, and there's some interesting stuff out there about him if you Google his name. Uh, but
Okay.
yeah, like I don't know if he really should be playing college basketball right now, but a judge ruled that he was going to be unfairly punished if they suspended him and essentially ending his college career, and that was more of a detriment than the university would suffer if things came out that he was guilty of. So feel free to read up on that. But yeah, I read up on that. I was like, man, that makes this feel even worse that this guy's the one that's crushing us.
Yeah. On the court though, it was also just the size overall, I think,
Yeah,
at every position, which is what I said like when people were asking me about Duquesne. I'm like, I kind of like our chances against a lot of teams, but like our one weakness would be just size all over the floor, which is what they had. Everyone was over 6'6".
yeah. Going into the game, the only thing that I was hoping for is that we'd be able to turn them over because they don't have a true point guard.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not turn out to be the case. I think we turned the ball over more than we turned them over.
Um, yeah, that is the case. We had 9 turnovers, they had 7. Um, and it was struggling to initiate any sort of offense, and we texted back and forth to have a chance against Illinois. We needed not only for our defense to play a little bit better, but for them to just flat out miss shots.
Yeah, and
And
they were not doing that.
they were not. They shot 60% from the field, 66% in the first half, I remember. think it was like 45% from three in the first half. They made every shot that they took, and they were wide open shots.
Yeah. Um,
And their shot chart was perfect. Like if you
yeah,
are analytical
either
basketball mind, it was either right at the
open.
rim or wide open threes
Yep.
all over the place. There wasn't one mid-range shot.
No, they played that perfectly. I did listen to one of the Illinois podcasts, and they said that their weak spot defensively is they give up open mid-range shots a lot, and we it didn't seem like we could find those either. They just stonewalled us at the perimeter, and were not letting us to do anything. DeMichael, I thought it was more often, but he only apparently had the two layups. But it seemed like he was one of the guys that could actually break through occasionally. But even Trey Clark, who usually can get to the basket at will, just I don't know. They were so good. And I think this was probably their best. Illinois fans and the media were talking about how this was their best defensive performance in a long time. So they were locked in, which was really unfortunate for us.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely was. I think I heard that as well, and like that they had some inconsistent play, like didn't live up to their expectations. That also led me to believe that we had more of a shot than we actually did going into the game. Um, but like
Turned
you
out
said,
we wish they were playing consistently, so they might have had their guard down going into our game.
yeah, exactly. Um, and DeMichael, I agree that DeMichael, I think he's going to be a nice, player to build around for next season. Uh, just a play that I'll shout out that they ran like so many times was with DeMichael. Like they'll set a pin down screen like at the foul line. DeMichael wraps around and he like kind of catches the ball as he's wrapping around and then just gets an easy layup to the rim. I feel like I saw that play like 10 times each game
Yeah, and
and
if
it worked almost every time.
and if a player is going to try to cheat and go under, then you just have a wide open jumper. So it is really a great offensive scheme. Um,
He's so good at getting to the rim, even though he's not like the quickest guy around, like
yeah,
even off the dribble as well.
he's got great body positioning when he's attacking. He really does.
Yeah,
Uh, Shout out to Jake, by the way. Got two jerseys with your name on them coming to our house in support after they dropped some retro Dukes jerseys that look awesome. We got one youth one and one for me. So can't wait to wear those for the next
sick,
few years.
nice. But
Um,
yeah,
I I guess we should kind of just touch on all the departures here. Uh, the main one we'll save for last. So we'll start with Dusan. I'll start with this. I had very high expectations for you coming into this year. Did not realize how bad the knee was going into this year. You fought back to probably come back faster than you should have, and you put it all on the line every game. You busted your butt on a knee that was not 100% healthy to try and contribute and find your role on the team. The efforts were appreciated. I feel bad for a lot of what I've said over the year. I'm going to look back and say I made some mistakes. That's on me. You go have a great pro career and show the haters like me wrong.
uh, yeah, I guess we can both admit we downplayed the injury a little bit or didn't take it into account into his overall play as much as maybe we should have. Um, but yeah, all the best of luck. Obviously, I mean, he had some crucial plays in some of the big moments. So it wasn't like a big detriment a lot of the time. And he had really good vision out of the post that he wasn't able to show consistently, but he showed enough flashes where, you know, showed how his basketball IQ, I guess.
Yeah. I do have to give a shout out to Zach Weiss because he did the final plus minus for all men's basketball after the season was officially over. Dusan ended the season with plus 27. So confirmed positive addition to the team. Guy who is right below him in plus minus, who did see some minutes in the game against Illinois, Andrei Seversov.
Yeah, and not just garbage time minutes.
No,
Like I
we
think
we
he
were
was
trying to find
definitely thrown
answers.
out there to try and find an answer. Yeah, so it was nice to see him.
Yeah,
Two of the biggest Savrasov supporters you can find out there.
definitely. Every time he came in for the second half of this season, I thought he brought quality minutes. Loved every second that he was out there. Can't wait to see him also play professionally after this year. He ends his college career with back-to-back championships, one with Texas Tech last year, and then one with us in the A10, and one of the most improbable championships that the A10's probably ever seen, with expectations going into the tournament.
Yeah, also started the year. People forget.
People forget, arguably one of our best starters to start the year.
Yeah, we won't get into that now. That'll be a whole other pod if we start
That
talking about that again.
that'll just be our post pod conversation of the what ifs, and all Savrasov could be a great Duke in lore. Let's see. Next senior would be. I want to save Trey for later, but we're running out of people to talk about here.
You kind of already said it.
Yeah, Trey Williams. I sent a tweet out already about this. I mean, you will not find a bigger Trey Williams fan than me. I don't think you will. I truly don't.
No, you loved him ever since last year when I first started doing this podcast with you. I was kind of bashing him, and that was like one of our first disagreements.
I mean, he from the get-go, he was on the 6-win team. He was one of the lone remainers from that team, and he just brought leadership, defense, toughness, all the intangibles in the world that you would want from a leader. He left Indiana State, a solid mid-major program, to take a chance at Duquesne. He sent out his kind of thank you Duquesne tweet today, and it hurt to see, but the definition of a warrior, literally put his body on the line countless times throughout his years at Duquesne. Going back to last year with Pirate Trey Williams, playing with cuts on his head that he needed basically an eye patch to play with, hurting his shoulder, playing with that, dislocating a finger, continuing to play when he's bandaged up there. There was no injury that stopped him from contributing to this team. And they did show him the love he deserved by letting him put the Duquesne bracket selection after they beat BYU to make us to the round of 32, which was great. Truly well deserved. Oh, I'm gonna miss
No,
him.
yeah, one of the OGs, been through thick and thin. You always like a guy like that, like he sees kind of the worst side of your franchise or school or whatever you're talking about, and then is on the other side to experience the absolute highest of highs as well. It's always good to see a story like that. Like you said, he just fought through all these injuries. Um, very reliable on both ends of the floor. Um, provided us buckets when we seemingly couldn't find any in multiple games this season and last season. Um, and I'll fully admit I didn't really see it when I first started watching this team early last year, and then the more I watched, the more I realized like it wasn't just he's a very talented player off the court, but or on the court, but off the court you could just see like his leadership as well with all the guys. So um yeah, very happy to have a guy like that part of such a memorable team.
And this might be my cult fanhood of him, but I'm convinced that if he was on another team, he could be the focal point of the offense and score 18 points a night if the offense was actually flowing through him, and he took a lesser role to stay a part of this Duquesne team and fit into his defensive first mindset that Dambrot craved and really needed for us to be as successful as we were. Next up, the Drame twins, Fusini and Hassan. Hassan kind of had his season with us shortened due to some leg injuries that he never fully recovered from. But when he did play at the start of the year, it was a nice addition. He was solid as a 5 and a kind of an interior 4. And man, oh man, his brother Fusini. I mean, you talk about a guy that highlighted the win against BYU. The amount of rebounding he did, offensive rebounding, the jump ball that will live on in Duquesne lore forever, with a double technical, which I still think is BS, because BYU had coaches and players run onto the floor to break up that scrum. That's an added technical in and of itself. But well, I digress. Hit every clutch 3 you could imagine, automatic from the corner, as you brought up in a previous pod. Just everything you could want from a 3 and D stretch 4. Truly everything.
He's the ideal like NBA player. Like he was the ideal what the NBA is craving. Like he was that for college basketball and these Duquesne Dukes. Um, so good on defense, our best rebounder, even though he wasn't the biggest on our team. He had good size, versatile, hard worker. And yeah, that jump ball just showed like his toughness, how much he wanted to win, wasn't afraid of anybody. He really was like this team needed that compared to last year. We didn't have a guy like Fusini on this team last year, so he was a huge addition and a big help in making this run.
And he was a big part of our roster flexibility, where he could play a 3 and a 4, truly could defend 3,
Could play a
4,
5
even
too.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just added so much to the team from so many different aspects. Dambrot mentioned it, that the Drames were winners and they taught our guys how to win. They brought that St. Peter's experience, that prior NCAA tournament run, and man, oh man, what a great addition the Drames were. I understand that they were fantastic inside the locker room too. Some President Gormley, during his press conference part, where Dambrot announced his retirement, brought up that they were the jokesters that kept the party going on the long plane ride home from Brooklyn. Incredible. So glad they left LaSalle to come to us. I can't imagine this team without those two.
Yeah, it's funny. Like not that I forgot that they played for LaSalle, but that team that knocked us out of the A10 tournament last year, and now they were part of the winning team of the whole damn thing this year. And just one last thing, like between the two of them, they also just had. It's just really cool to see brothers play, and then when they were on the court at the same time, they showed like really good chemistry together. It was just like that's just a cool thing to see. When brothers play together, like they also on the court, they knew they just knew where each other were going to be all the time.
Yeah. I don't want to diminish them, but what literally popped in my head was that Disney Channel movie of the twins playing, and them just like knowing where each other was going to be before they actually decided to
It was
leave.
really true. Like I was seeing it with my own eyes. So I'm like, these guys, like when they're on the court together, I mean, I kind of prefer one over the other, overall talent wise. But when they're on the floor together, they were able to find each other. Didn't matter where.
Yeah. Hassan was plus 21 on the year, by the way. Fusini, second best plus minus on the team,
Not
plus
surprising.
166.
Not surprising at all. Not surprising at all.
The last two players, I don't know how to go in or how to order this. Which would you prefer to talk about first?
We can talk about them together, just like, we just did with the Drame twins.
Yeah.
1A, 1B.
Yeah. Batman and Superman, the Justice League duo. Jimmy Trey Clark, the Pittsburgh Steeler, Day Day, the best shooter that this town has ever seen, Grant. Uh spot up shooter. Right, Alec?
Spot up shooter. Also, don't forget oh, I'm damn. What's his name? That played at Duquesne, White.
Oh, Micah
Micah,
Mason.
Micah. Yeah, Mike, come on. You're talking about greatest shooter?
Sorry, Micah. You were special. You had a great shot. I'm gonna go with Day Day. I'm gonna pick him 10 times out of
No,
10.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I was just kind of messing around.
Uh yeah, no, those two talked about how they were a dynamic duo. They're brothers for life. They talked about how special it was that Duquesne brought them together. They'll remember these days for the rest of their lives. They'll always be in contact with each other. Those two are basically inseparable when you're talking about this team and the most valuable players because they're what made our offense go. They're what made our team become special on defense because both of their efforts defensively is what made this team as deadly as they were when it came to stopping these 3-point shooters, which they had to do throughout this entire 2-week run for us to get anywhere close to the NCAA tournament.
It's interesting to look back at both of their Duquesne careers, and they kind of had to make strides in the opposite ends of the floor. We knew Day Day was an offensive force last year, led the league or led the team in points both last year and this year. Um, but then this year, Day Day really stepped up with his defense. I said multiple points, like his on ball defense was always pretty decent. It was the off ball that he would fall asleep sometimes. That improved drastically once this team got into rhythm and an identity of defense this year. And then last year was the opposite for Trey Clark. We knew he was like phenomenal on defense. It was his offense, 3-point shooting were question marks going into the last year's team. And he made big strides on the offensive end last year. And he made big strides this year in the point Trey Clark. Um, it's just really fascinating how far and how much progress we've seen between those two guys when they were already super talented to begin with.
Yeah. I still think Jimmy can find himself onto an NBA roster at some point with his athleticism at being that point guard. He needs to keep working on it, obviously, but the potential is there.
He has the quickness and speed for sure. Yeah. Size will be, a weakness, but that's not something that he can't overcome.
No, and he showed he can go up against bigger guards pretty consistently, especially on the defensive end.
His first step is as quick as anyone in the country. It doesn't matter if it's Illinois. He was just as quick as those guys, maybe not like speed for speed, foot speed, but quickness. His first step as elite gets.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, one of the first things I remember saying on this podcast last year, Day Day Grant is a great freaking name. That's just a great basketball player name. Day Day freaking Grant.
The Steel City Kid came from another Steel City of Lorain, Ohio. Has it tattooed on his right under his neck. That was one of the first things that he was asked about in a post-game presser is Steel City tattoo. Yeah. Turns out there's two Steel Cities.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
at the beginning of last year, Day Day was obviously the one that caught everybody's eyes with his scoring performances. And I was worried that we were going to scare him away by fawning over him too much. I'm
Right.
so glad that he stuck around. So glad that Jimmy continued to develop the way he did. I mean, we called it halfway through last year. is he the best player on this team? I mean, sure,
Yeah,
we asked that question about 5 different times, but
we did. That was a big talking point on last year for sure.
but uh it really didn't matter who the best player was this year. This was such a complete team that everybody played such crucial roles where it truly didn't matter anymore. And I think that the entire team picked up on that. And now we got to talk about the guy who brought all these players together. Just as he put it, grab players that were underappreciated, undervalued, and realize their potential under him. Uh, I mean, he truly did Mission Impossible. John Rothstein killed that with over saying it after every Dambrot win since he took over Duquesne. But you look at what Duquesne was 8 years ago when he took over. We had more 20 loss seasons probably in the past 10, 15 years than 20 win seasons prior to him signing up. We had so many of our wins against D1 AA programs and the bottom of the barrel when it came to D1 programs to try and find any wins that we could. And he brought the most talented teams I've seen. Just between the first rebuild that he did and this one, you probably have the best Duquesne team of the last 50 years if you add those all-stars together. Incredible.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. You can't write it any better. Like, if you're gonna go out, and the whole reason why he came here was to do what we just did, and he did it in his last season of coaching, professional coaching, like period. I mean, you know, they write scripts about that in movies.
And the craziest part is he knew it was his last season. Nobody else did. And they were 0-5. And he had to be thinking,
Yeah, sour taste in his mouth, I'm
yeah.
sure.
And then he never gave up. The players never gave up. I mean, the amount of things that was going on in his life this year too, just
Yeah,
he gave it all to us too. I'm so glad that he got his flowers. I really, really hope that the athletic department listens to him as to who the next coach should be. Um, there's a bit of a movement on Twitter tonight. We want Drew. I think it is the clear choice. Zach Weiss wrote a great article about that there was no other choice. It has to be Drew. If you pick anybody else, we lose all the momentum we just got from the last
right,
7 years of building this program back up.
right.
I mean, we still have a good core going into next year. We didn't want to talk about it too much during this season because of the amount of talent that was going to be leaving. But Jake DeMichael, Jakob Netchis, Chaubby and David Dixon, that's good depth at the bigs there. We got Matsu
Bronski as well.
Spronsky.
Yep.
Yeah. Kareem. We've got a decent guard depth, and that's not even counting any new players, which we're gonna be getting new players. There's no doubt about that. And like we
Yeah.
said a few weeks ago, before the A10 championship even happened, our recruiting pool is now bigger. We've reached a few tiers higher now because of the success we just had.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I don't know how you can entertain anyone from the outside to take Duquesne head coaching job at this point. It would feel like you're just kind of not throwing it away, but
No,
definitely going backwards in what you built than more so a move of going forward.
I think regardless of it, if Coach Calipari was a choice that we could make right now, truly think Drew is the better choice because Cal hasn't built this program up. He hasn't been part of growing Duquesne. Cal would be a flash in the pan sort of hire. Drew is here for the long haul.
Yeah. You're trying to build something. You're trying to emulate like of what Villanova did, where they kind of had to build themselves up from scratch. They're a small private school as well. I mean, they're a little bit bigger in size than Duquesne, but pretty similar. Same thing with Gonzaga. They had to build their program. They weren't always what we know as Gonzaga now. There is a blueprint to being a small Division I basketball team and building like a national program.
Shout out to the entire Dambrot family. Donna Dambrot for going through everything she did and continually telling Keith to get back in the gym, to keep coaching. Heck, she doesn't want him to stop coaching. He broke down in tears when he mentioned that part, where that's how much she loves him, that she doesn't want him to stop doing what he loves, regardless of what she's dealing with on her end. And Keith's not really going away. I mean, he's not going to be coaching, but he's
a
gonna
legend. He's a legend.
He's-
He established himself as a legend. Like he can walk on water whenever he comes to campus.
Yeah, I talked to Anakin about this. He's going to come back to games next year. They're going to have a private section for him or something, because he's going to get swarmed with people.
100%. Yeah. He gets his box, gets whatever he wants. Whatever he asks for, just give it to him. He didn't ask for much while he was here. Like, yeah, the man can get whatever he wants.
Yeah. There were so many players that built into this team being special. Austin Rotroff being the biggest one from a prior team that kind of helped lay the culture down to being the hard-nosed rebounding team that was needed, where we needed to fight for those offensive rebounds. We needed to take advantage of every opportunity we could get. He was able to go witness in Brooklyn the A10 championship, get down on the floor and celebrate with some of the players, and watched from in Omaha as well. Glad he got some flowers for this. He truly was an integral part. He was, I think, the first player to make it from freshman all the way through graduation with Dambrot at Duquesne.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And he rode the highs and the lows, and I'm so glad that the highs and lows all led to this special year. It's been so long since it actually happened, and I still can't, like, it happened, and I still can't fully grasp that it really happened. It still feels like a dream.
Yeah. I mean, losing the way we did, like it didn't hurt that much. I mean, did it suck? Yeah. Do we get a little like kind of embarrassed? Yeah. But like I really, like, it doesn't even matter. Like that first round win, getting to the tournament at all is huge. Hearing podcasts I listen to talk about Duquesne on a national level, TV that I watch talking about Duquesne on national level, it was amazing.
Had to apologize for not knowing the Dukes were like that after they won against BYU.
Yep. I didn't excuse me, I weren't familiar with your game. Like that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, it was, you can't draw it up any better. The only way it would have been better if they played in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's missing from this story, I think.
But honestly, it was kind of special without them being in Pittsburgh, because you had so many different watch parties across the city. Like there were fans watching together at PPG Paints Arena, watching on their like cell phones, and then they put it on the Jumbotron during the actual games that were going on. They had it as a small picture-in-picture on the Jumbotron. Creighton coach mentioned that it was weird because there were reactions from the fans going for that game while they were playing right in front of them. The Power Center with all that student involvement, Mike's Beer Bar, which had packed houses for like a week straight. So many bars and fans getting together across the city. And then, of course, the diehards who went all the way to Omaha to watch those games.
Yeah, there were some watch parties out in Philly too. I got some alumni emails
Yeah, Philly,
There was,
DC.
yeah,
It was a true revival of Duquesne basketball. That I know you're not on Twitter, but Duquesne Twitter came alive. There's usually like 4 of us on Duquesne Twitter
right.
throughout the season. We've got like 150 followers on Twitter right now of mostly Duquesne fans.
That's sick.
Who would
Yeah,
have
I mean, yeah, I know. Like, I guess that part now, I guess we can talk a little bit about ourselves, like the fact that we did this podcast and timed it to a point where they did this run. It's like I think you're making it up, honestly.
perfectly? Not literally the start of last year was the start of this team too.
Right. Yeah,
Like
100%.
perfectly. Because if we started during the 6 win year, we would have had to stop right then and there. We're bad luck.
Yeah. You could argue that, some people should be thanking me for this. Like as soon as I came here, we just started winning most of the time. So I'm
uh,
not going to say that, but you could make that argument.
I mean, I'll bring this fact up. We called them out for not being able to win on the road earlier this year.
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was true. And I also said, I'm pretty sure I said something like, this team is just not clutch. Like they just do dumb
They,
things in the clutch. And then they flipped that completely around. Trey turned into clutch Trey. He showed it at BYU. He showed it at VCU. Showed it with Dayton. This team closed out games like a veteran team. Which they were a veteran team this whole time. They had to find it within themselves, and they had it the entire time.
Dambrot said they learned how to win. And that's truly what makes good teams great, is learning how to win those close games. And man, did it show that they learned, because I was most comfortable whenever we were in close games at the end of the year. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if if we were ever ahead by too much, I knew it wasn't going to last.
Right.
Um, no, but I mean, earlier this year, our road wins where it was the neutral site against Charleston and the neutral site, which was more of a home game against Bradley.
Right.
And then they became road warriors at the end of the year. It was crazy.
They flipped the switch. They completely flipped the switch. I'm glad. I've never been more happy to be wrong about a team ever in my life. I'll always be happy to be wrong if this is the result.
Yeah. And uh, what a magical year. And the best part is nobody in the program thinks it's just a one and done.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
It's
But also, if we went like, I don't know, 6-22 next year, that would suck. But who cares?
so totally worth
Honestly,
it.
who cares? Like, totally worth it.
If you
It's
asked
like,
any Duquesne fan who had gone 47 years before an NCAA tournament appearance, whether they would trade that experience,
yeah,
not a chance.
exactly. I mean, it's like people my dad's age when the Eagles won the Super Bowl for like all those people waited their entire lives to see something like that. That's pretty much what just happened here. So I'm not going to take it for granted, and I'm not going to, bitch and moan about years to come if there's some ups and downs because progress isn't totally linear. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's any sort of, if we don't have a 21 season next year, then it
Yeah.
is what it is. You build off of that anyway.
Now that I've experienced this, I can say this with complete certainty. Would not trade a Pirates World Series win for this experience.
Wow.
That's that's how special this run was.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there.
I mean,
That's pretty much the equivalent.
just what it means for
Like,
the university. Admissions in and of itself, just for winning one NCAA tournament game, is going to go through the roof. Like that.
Yeah.
luckily they keep building dorms, so they're gonna have room for the students. But
Yeah. They're not going to be in the gym like when I think that was my freshman year or like the year before my freshman year, there were people just sleeping in the gym.
shout out to the Duquesne blackout.
Yep. Oh,
There was a pharmacy like building where they taught classes that turned into makeshift dorms for the rest of the year. It was
what a time.
wild
What a
times.
time.
Uh, and we're old, and that time was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Might have been more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, your freshman year. Yeah, that would have been over 10.
God. Yeah. All right. I think that's where we wrap it up.
Yeah, now that we've dated ourselves, um, just
But yeah, I don't think I have anything like there's not much else to say. I mean, it's just as it was a great run.
yeah. Just want to give some shout outs to some other people involved, the media that have been consistently following Duquesne throughout all of this. Uh, Zach in particular, but the the play-by-play announcers that have stuck through thick and thin, all the staffers at Duquesne who have been working there, just trying to find a way to make this all possible. They invested so much into the basketball programs. It started with the women's team showing that an NCAA tournament bid was possible. They doubled down their efforts on the men's side of things and found the success that this university had been craving for so long.
Shout out to the current women's team that's just won their second round NIT game,
Yeah, second round WNIT game. They got a bye through the first round. They're now in the Sweet 16 of the NIT, going to Purdue for their next game.
which is also a very that's this is a good run too.
Yeah,
NIT's nothing to sneeze at.
yeah, and uh, I was there tonight. Uh, didn't want to touch on it too much, but since we brought it up, we're down 8 points with a minute 10 to go, and we come back to tie the game before overtime, and then just take over the game in overtime. The coop was as loud as I've heard it, and it was a women's basketball game that everybody showed up for. The students stayed throughout the entire thing. I expected them to leave early. I'm not going to lie. And they
Right.
stayed and they got loud. The defense chants were awesome. The cheers, the booing of the refs was awesome in this game. Uh,
That's what you want to hear.
and then we drew an offensive foul to turn the ball over to clinch the victory right before the end. You'll love to see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was able to watch just overtime. Got home from work a little late tonight, but I mean, yeah, they closed it out in overtime, so I was able to see a win in overtime. And Wasselson with being clutch, and you told me that she basically like dragged us to overtime by herself. So shout out to her specifically.
Yeah, and shout out to Gene Sterator's nephew, I think, who was the ref that made that offensive foul call at the end of the
Okay.
game.
Good to know.
Found out that tidbit from another fan that's who that was. He pointed that out like a few minutes before that call happened, and then that just really highlighted that call. This women's team is so special too. Burn the ships was the mantra throughout the A10 tournament for them, and they're continuing to do that because there are still 5 contributing seniors on that team that are probably most of them are going to be done playing basketball after this because they're going to actually have professional jobs that pay well from their academic success.
Yeah.
So they're leaving it all on the floor. Lauren Wasselson being one of them. Onions as the men's basketball players brought up
Yes.
after free throws. Onions.
Absolutely.
So with that, I think we will wrap it up. Let's go, Dukes.
Go Dukes.
The Dukes are back and now it's time to